Well, hello everyone. Welcome again to Private Universe. Today we have the long-awaited third installment of Human Journeys. I chatted with Dr. John about his life and his work.
Okay, I've been thinking about the many years I spent helping extremely wealthy people to write their memoirs. And as you know, that was the subject of my doctorate, which I finished because it's very important to finish anything you start and to accept the challenge and never to back down to it. So we either control our lives or we become victims, and it's a really bad idea to ever become a victim of anything or anyone. So really, what was really interesting about all those people that engaged me to help them to become authors was the fact that they're all wealthy and they could afford to pay me. That's really important. But also what's important was that all of them had downfall. All of them faced trouble and they defeated it. They never allowed themselves to become victims. For example, one guy built a soft drinks factory on Norfolk Island. He was a really smart guy, an engineer. He went through the Depression. He learned to adapt to make things that people would buy, and then eventually he built his dream, a soft drinks factory on Norfolk Island, and it burned to the ground after a couple of years, and he just built it again. And that's the difference between these people and the people that don't succeed. The people that don't become millionaires, they just keep trying. They're determined. Nothing stops them. It's like pushing a tennis ball underwater. If you let it go, it's going to come up somewhere else. There's no question about that. So I was talking a bit earlier about taking control in your childhood. One of the things I learned really early is not to become a victim. So to do that, I started to box. And I boxed with a state champion. I never beat him. He was a much better fighter than me, and he could see, and I can't see very well. But I learned some technique. I learned some physical technique, but I also learned some psychological technique about being resilient. So this is why it's empowered me to take control over bad situations. Okay, it always ends, it always starts, it always finishes, and you always have to be in control. So now I'm training with a school that's called Red Boat Kung Fu in Redfern, and our teacher, our main coach, is a guy called Rick Spain, who is a world champion. And Rick is an example of what you need to do in life. To become world champion, you have to be really incredible. You need to be talented, but you need to be also very disciplined. So to get the stretches he wanted, he joined the ballet. This is a hard fighter, but he joined the ballet. To become fast, he trained with the Olympic sprinters. He ran 20 kilometres every morning, trained. He was determined. He's 15 years old. He was determined to become world champion, and he did everything he needed to do. No excuses. So what's important about Rick Spain, Red Boat Kung Fu, and not being a victim is you don't make excuses. You can't be negative, because if you're negative, you're defeated. You've already lost the fight in life, in the ring, on the mat at the Queen, in life. So, while I was writing my books, I had a very wealthy client whose name I cannot mention because I signed a non-disclosure with him, but he's extremely wealthy. Owned a penthouse in Double Bay, owned another penthouse up in Surfers Paradise right on the beach. But he wrote a really boring story and I needed some help. So I started doing the doctorate to get free help from academics at the University of Central Queensland. And he effectively had been given everything in life, but he was really unhappy. He hadn't made a success of it because he's always dreaming about something else, always worried about someone taking his money. I don't think you can do that. I think you have to live with what you got and appreciate what you have in front of you. But anyway, he was the reason I started my doctorate. Even though I'd written a lot of books, the fact that I had written a lot of books and contributed to a lot of books made the academic staff up there very excited by the prospect of having me as a student, as a candidate for PhD. But the reason I finished is that I was training in Kung Fu with Rick Spain. And I was in my 50s, I had to do my black belt, and there was no excuses. I absolutely had no excuse not to do that black belt. I was determined. I was training with another guy who taught me, who mentored me, an Aboriginal man called Charlie Trindle. Now, Charlie is an inspiration in the idea of courage. Charlie has no cartilage in his wrists or his knees. And when he was in his 20s, the doctors told him he wouldn't walk by the time he was 31. So here we were in our mid-50s practicing for our black belt. And as a serious black belt, they don't give them away. We had to fight 10 people. We had to train and show our discipline for at least 3 hours. Our katas, our form, perfection. Absolute perfection, and we had to show that we could fight our way out of a bad situation. So Charlie bandaged his wrists up. He was in incredible pain because you can't punch without cartilage in your wrists. He bandaged himself up and he fought, and we fought, and he's very scary to fight because he's very fast. His father was in a boxing ring with Shaman's boxers, so he's really got some talent. But it just shows that he could have been negative and said, I can't do this. I've got no cartilage. I've got arthritis. I'm not going to do it. But he did it. So I don't think you should listen to people that try and belittle you. What do you think? Charlie?
Yeah, another Charlie. Yeah. Oh, look, I agree 100%. Most of success is already achieved in our minds before we even take the first step. And so is failure. I can see that on a T-shirt somewhere. We'll
make a fortune out of it.
So
or not. Doesn't matter.
Probably or not, I suspect. But look, I truly believe that, and it's a bit of a cliche, of course, but we forget cliches. Cliches are very cheesy, if you like, but we cannot forget, and that's what they're good for, just to remind us. I know they're a bit annoying, but it's good to remind ourselves that there's great things in the power of the mind. You are already successful and you are already a failure, already. Before you start anything, it depending on your state of mind when you go for it. It could be as simple as asking someone out. Already, if you go in thinking that you're not going to succeed, it's likely that you won't. And it's the same as going into a fight, opening up a business, or even grander things, publishing a book like you were talking about, that we both have done so. And it's something that is very, very time consuming. It takes a lot of work, and the benefits that you get from it is purely artistic and aesthetic, aren't they? Because financially speaking, it's a big investment, and not only with regards to the actual investment of making the book, but the time it takes one to do so. If you put that into hours earned somewhere else, then you're talking of thousands and thousands of dollars that most authors don't recover. And there's a handful, just like there are in sport and so forth, a handful of people that make a lot of money in their discipline. And that is a combination of skill and also determination.
Oh, you're absolutely right about that being the truth of being a writer. Of all those people I worked for, we sold a few out. Some of them, from the bush to the beach, we sold out completely. They went into Demics, they went into major bookstores. We ran out of copies. But really, it just costs you money. But it's not really the book. And people said to me, I feel like I've got to write a book. I've got a book in me. But it's the journey, it's the process. It's engaging with yourself and going, well, I could have done this better. It's a catalyst for self-analysis and for moving forward from the past and dealing with the issues that you had in the past. And what I did notice about the people that succeeded and the people that failed, the people that succeeded had trauma in their lives. They had something really difficult to deal with, and that drove them to finish their work, to finish the book. You're doing it for ego, forget it, because it won't sustain you for long enough. It's too hard.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it's part of life. We have to take up hobbies that give us satisfaction, that give us a return of a certain type of happiness that we don't get in other ways. So I think the investment, the emotional and the energetic investment into making any form of art, whether it's through literature or painting, maybe even doing a podcast or even being an autobiographer or whatever it may be. There's many ways of one performing and producing art. It just depends on the medium, of course. For whatever reason one gets into it, there has to be a huge return of a certain type of happiness. Thank you, friends of Private Universe. That was the third part of Human Journeys. We will bring you the fourth very soon. Take care of each other in these troubled times. Remember, my friends, existence is a miracle.